When we hear the phrase child labor, almost all of us get the same mental picture. We see photos from history books of immigrant children or children abroad in sweatshops working around dangerous machines for very little pay. I'm Laura Wolf, an agriculture student here at MSU, and today my topic is child labor, but it isn't what you think. When I say child labor, high school vocational classes probably are not what come to mind. Today, I'd like to show you my mindset about child labor by explaining proposed changes, their effects on vocational education, and its effects on me as a representative of the affected group. First, let's talk about changes proposed in September 2011. The U.S. Department of Labor issued a notice of proposed rulemaking to amend child labor in agriculture regulations in 2011. Their goal, according to the law, was to make the rules for agriculture more like those for non-agriculture industries. According to Ag H.O.s, an expert on the subject and legislative liaison for Missouri Farm Bureau, the Secretary of Labor is using this proposal to take care of a problem prevalent in her home state of California, the children of migrant workers becoming a liability in orchards. The changes don't just apply to migrant workers, though. They're for all workers in the U.S. under the age of 16. Here are a few examples of a handout written by Nurse Mary E. Miller for a rural and agricultural health center in Washington in 2011. It outlines the differences between existing and proposed rules, and it sounds a bit like, well, maybe a lot like legal jargon, so I'll keep it short. Reduces maximum height at which youth under age 16 may work at elevation from 20 feet to 6 feet, including work on ladders. Expand prohibitions from lists of specific machines to all power-driven equipment. Prohibit engaging or assisting in practices that inflict pain upon an animal, such as vaccinating or treating sick animals. Imagine that you're a legislator, and one of the people in your office has just briefed you about these changes. What do you say? It sounds good, and it's needed, right? According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, over 40,000 agricultural workers were injured on the job in 2011, out of 967,800 workers. Given this information, my guess is that you think, yep, check, let's move on to the real issues. And that's exactly where many actual legislators are right now. Now that we know the basics of the proposal, let's take a look at how schools could be affected. When vocational and agricultural educators came across this legal jargon that I just read to you, they heard something different, a threat. The maximum height rule means that students working for area farmers would be legally unable to assist in retrieving hay from a hayloft, although they could stand there, until they were 16. The power-driven equipment rule means that landscaping classes couldn't use certain tools to landscape, and construction classes couldn't use certain necessary tools to construct. The rule I read about animals would keep students from exploring and gaining valuable experience in the field of veterinary science until their junior year of high school, when the career crunch is on. When Heath Wright, the agriculture teacher at Ozark High School, heard about the proposal, he could feel his students' opportunities shrinking instead of stretching. According to a Springfield Newsletter article, March 6, 2012, the high school is in the process of building a school farm to add to other hands-on experience with local farmers and with greenhouse and welding shop classes. Hands-on work experience is important. In a survey I conducted March 9th, over half of you mentioned work ethic or responsibility as benefits of holding a job during high school. If the opportunities are more restricted for work in high school, it follows that fewer students will choose to hold a job, and fewer students will develop these traits. Do you remember the statistic I told you earlier? Imagine what might happen if fewer of those workers had been trained for more than maybe a few months because of these rules. It could be that accidents, injuries, and deaths would increase instead of decrease. Another increase that we wouldn't want is the strain on our pocketbooks. Food prices could rise because of an even more limited number of willing and able agricultural workers, resulting in produce scarcity. We've heard a little about the changes and how educators feel about them. Now I'd like to tell you a short story about my reactions. As a farmer's daughter, a future teacher and advocate, and a vocational agriculture student, these changes could have a significant effect on me. I decided in 7th grade in Ag H.O.s that I'd be an FFA in high school. FFA is an agricultural organization. Our class project in Ag H.O.s was to build a flower box. We learned how to use circular saws and drills and other tools under the supervision of our teacher. And before we could step foot in the shop, we had to get 100% on a safety test, which is part of the Ag Hazardous Occupations Student Learner Exemption. No one got hurt, and we learned a lot about basic safety precautions to take in a shop setting. For FFA, I was required to hold a job and keep records for a supervised agricultural experience. I chose to mow lawns and scout crops for my dad. Under the proposed rules, those 2 jobs would have been illegal for me until I was 16 years old. The rules prohibit the operation of power-driven equipment, which includes lawnmowers. They also eliminate the usual exemptions for students working for parents. If the company is incorporated, my dad is part owner in Brower Farms, LLC. Now that you're more aware of the U.S. Department of Labor's proposed changes and their potential harmful effects, I have a challenge for you. Keep those history book pictures of child labor from clouding your vision, and help others to do the same. Spend a few minutes on Google learning more about the proposed changes. When you find an article that makes a great argument, share it on Facebook. Then take a step further. Contact your congressman and explain what you've learned and where you stand. Instead of doing something wrong that sounds right, show your government that you expect them to do what is right, even if it sounds wrong.